Joost, hello.
Hi, good evening. It's very nice to be here. I'm at home, actually. I'm working in Ghent. And if you look at that page in the program, you will see Ghent University. It's a very simple message, but as this gentleman said, reality is more complicated. Also in my case, I work at Ghent University part-time as a professor at the Faculty of Bioscience Engineering, and I'm part-time working at the Research Institute ILVO. And I think some of you have visited ILVO yesterday, some of you have visited my faculty yesterday in the excursions. I think I have been invited here because I have been studying as an engineer, but also as an anthropologist. I have both degrees and both perspectives. I've been studying societal debates on mainly GM controversies and trying to understand. I didn't try to understand who is right and who is wrong, but I tried to understand how is it possible that intelligent, wise and enthusiastic people on all sides of the spectrum can fight like this about a topic such as GM, but it could have been smart agriculture, or it could have been other topics. How is that possible? And I think I will try to reflect on that kind of questions here.
Dick, didn't want everybody to get too complacent. They don't know who I'm going to go to next. Who are you on this panel? What are you representing? What are you doing? What's your role?
In 2005, I created a Foodlog, a website in the Netherlands, which is an online journal, and people interact, professionals, the general audience, they all interact on all of these belligerent topics, so to speak. I was trained as a philosopher and a linguist, and probably my role in Dutch society is something like a king's fool. So I try to phrase taboos, break taboos, and just keep it working, keep it effectively, stopping before my head gets chopped off.
Do you know where that red line is, Dick?
I'm still here.
Alina, good afternoon, welcome.
Hello.
Who are you on the couch?
Hi everyone, my name is Alina and I'm from Sense About Science. We're a charity that challenges the misrepresentation and misinformation of science and evidence in public life. I'm the head of international public engagement, so I work with researchers. I actually train researchers on how to do effective public engagement, and I also work with researchers to plan their public engagement plans. And I also work with policymakers to get them to use more evidence in their everyday lives. So I guess I'm here as the public engagement person. Yeah, that's it.
So you should be perfect. Everything that comes out of your mouth should be
I
a
hope
gem,
so.
a golden gem, because you know how to do it. Hello, Amy.
Yeah, I hope so.
Hello, so I suppose I'm the token industry shill on the panel, which I'm proud to be. And
Did you hear that welcome, Amy? That sounded good.
Probably surprises people that I'm happy to be here. I lead a science communication team at Bayer Crop Science. And what also might surprise people is I was legacy Monsanto, and I worked for Monsanto for 24 years. Totally proud of it. My father worked for Monsanto for 35 years, and so Monsanto has always been like family to me, which is a contradiction probably for most people in this world.
This is a good team. I would love a good team as well. I need somebody on the yellow microphone and someone on the blue microphone. Can I have 2 volunteers to be the mic wranglers? Who wants to be the volunteer to be a mic wrangler? Nathan, there you go, thank you. Would you stand where people can see you? Very good. Yeah, they can see you there. Maybe in the aisle, Nathan. That would be good. All right. So here's how we're going to do this. This is a conversation. It's so relevant to all of you. Whenever you want to be in the conversation, put your hand up. The microphone will come to you. Nathan may well throw it, not because he doesn't like you, but because it's a throwable microphone. And hopefully it hits your hand. And then when it gets to you, if we keep talking, we don't notice, just tap the mic on the top, and then we'll all hear it, and then you're part of the conversation. It is that easy. If we're talking about best practices for communication, I asked the panel to show and tell a best practice. So backstage, they're going to put up a picture of a beetle, and when that goes back up there instead of us, then will you start telling the story about why you wanted to show us some beetles,
Yeah.
Dick?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we?
It's going to get up there.
It's
There you
go-
go.
it's there, yeah.
There you go.
So this is a black bean aphid on sugar beets, And actually, that was a very good case of communication, and it just happened. In the Netherlands, neonics were forbidden this year for the first time, and farmers couldn't use them. And they said, well, look what is happening, and look the kind of pesticides we need to use now. And that is very convincing, I think. So you can talk about neonics, yes, no, harmful, yes, no. But actually, we went back. Now, is a neonic the best solution? That's up for discussion. But this case, as it just happened in practice, is very convincing as a case of science communication that just happened in real communications. So the worries of the public actually were coming true in a very different way, in the way they didn't want it. But now they were confronted with this effect.
It's a bit like if you, and you can tell me because maybe you shouldn't do analogies, maybe you should just be very upfront about what we're talking about in science. But I'm thinking about a little kid, and you keep telling them, don't go near the socket, don't go near the socket, you're going to hurt yourself. And then you put, what the public did was they put their finger in the socket, they got those beetles, electric shock, and then they decided that maybe they shouldn't be doing that.
Make people experience
Pain.
Indeed,
Right.
what it looks like.
Taught them a lesson.
We live in a kind of reality, and when we talk about it, when there is a lot of debate about it, it's debate. But when you experience it in the real world, you get this.
Which I think is the quandary, right? And luckily, so this is a fantastic example, and I think luckily you were able to show someone quickly the result of their decisions. I think that's probably the biggest challenge for most of us in agriculture is we all think we know what would happen if glyphosate were taken away, and we can explain that, but the reality is it would take a long time to show a consumer that type of result. And so you can keep saying it and saying it and saying it, don't put your finger in the socket, and by the time it happens, it will be too late. And I think but that shouldn't keep any of us from stopping communicating. In fact, it should fire us up more.
But it
I
could
agree.
teach us that we could change the communication. You could ask your child, why do you want to put your fingers in the socket? And try to understand the position of the child. And that will not lead, of course, to a position that you say, okay, great, now you can put your fingers in the socket, but at least...
What if they're too little to understand? So, I mean,
Yeah,
the child that's usually trying to put their finger in the socket is really too small to understand the consequences. And I think, and I'm not trying to insult the consumer, but I think that's part of the disconnect is they don't know what they don't know.
Well, yeah. But I think what you are saying now is a very typical position,
Yeah.
I think, of researchers who consider the audience, the public, as ignorant.
Yeah.
And even sometimes, but you cannot say this in public, maybe too stupid to understand, because they are not scientists, are they? And that leads to a very typical way of communication in which the scientist, the researcher, might be a little bit arrogant sometimes in the
He
way
is
he is
arrogant.
talking
Definitely.
to and talking about the people.
Yeah, then the arrogance, I think, keeps
And-
people from communicating, right? Which is also a problem.
Yeah, I think in the work that we do, the first thing, our whole ethos is that it's public-led, expert-fed. So we're not assuming what people want to know. We're looking at the actual questions that people are asking, and we're actually scoping what people are talking about, what their real worries are, where, are they actually worried about risk assessments, for example? No, they're not. They're wondering, okay, is my food actually safe to eat? So why are we not answering those questions directly, and why are we not, actually putting in the time to figure out what people are talking about instead of assuming what they're asking, which I think is where the arrogance lies. You think you know better, but actually, if you just answer the question, I think it's a very simple solution.
Dick, you said without even a beat, scientists are arrogant.
Yes, they are, as Joost says, they are suggested. Well, I was trained as a philosopher of science, and actually we are telling the people how to think because they don't understand, and we are specialists. And probably, as Joost will agree, turn it around, start indeed from the worries
Yeah.
of people, ask them what they are worried about, and make them understand what will happen if, even through gaming, and that would work, whereas scientists are explaining their worlds, and their worlds are about presuppositions. So the black lady over there, you wanted a consensus before you enter into the discussion with regulators. Isn't that is what you said? And no, yes, you were the first speaker. And basically, it's so interesting why they don't agree, because not agreeing will show that they are genuine, that there is an argument about presuppositions. You can look at it this way, that way, and people will decide.
Yeah, not a consensus. They don't agree on the message. And the message could be, for example, with climate science, where, people do projection and there is no consensus in terms of, what the projection around rainfall will be. Just to get people to agree on the message, not for them to have consensus of.
Okay.
Yes. So there's a difference between consensus and agreeing on the message. If the message is to say, okay, at the moment we have not reached, conclusion on certain things and things like that, it's a message, but not necessarily for them to have consensus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me just go to the yellow microphone there. Hello, what were you going to say?
Hello, this is Malek from Smithers Vicient. Speaking of consensus, I think we do have consensus among the scientists. In our community, we do consent at times. Our training as scientists, we tend to tailor our communication to our fellow scientists. If a cool idea comes up in the lab or I have a discovery, the first thing that comes to mind is not the local newspaper, it's not the local TV, but a journal, the scientific journal for publication. So that's how we are trained. We come up with a cool idea, it goes in the scientific journal instead of the local newspaper. So we leave that responsibility to the media, and the media picks up on anything that is sensational, and they do the communication for us instead of scientists doing the communication part.
Yeah, I agree. And one thing I would advocate for strongly, for any of you in here, when was the last time you went and talked in a classroom? And when I say classroom, I don't mean university. I mean to a class of 5th or 6th graders, 11 to 12-year-olds. If you haven't done that in a while, go do it. I think it teaches you a different way of thinking. It turns science communication absolutely on its head for a couple reasons. One is 11 and 12-year-olds get bored very quickly, so you better be interesting fast or they're going to be fidgeting and going crazy in their seats and start probably throwing things at you or something because they get bored. You have to change your message because they won't understand you if you pretend you're speaking to your university class. They will ask hard questions, and not because they're trying to offend you, but because they're innocent and they really want to learn and know. And those are the best challenges that we can ever get as a scientist, is from a child who really genuinely is coming up from a place of learning.
I want to talk about what happens when something is going horribly wrong. And Alina,
Yep.
you gave us an example of something called the Rofstede GM appeal.
Yep.
Talk to us about the story. Just remind the room or tell the room about the story,
Great.
and then pause, and then we will play the GM appeal.
Great. So there's a research institute in the UK called the Rothamsted Research Institute.
Don't play it yet. Hold,
We've heard
hold,
that
hold,
protesters are
hold,
planning to
hold.
attack
hold.
LGMV
Team back there.
outside on the
Hi, team.
27th of
It's going so beautifully. Not yet. Thank you. Just put that little arrow back at the start. We want to hear the story before we hear the appeal.
Yes.
Why did these scientists have to do an appeal in the first place?
So they had a test field for wheat that was genetically modified, and a bunch of activists basically said, we're going to come and destroy your crops. And they had spent years on this crop, on this test field, and this test field was also really close to a bunch of test fields that were experiments that were going for like almost 200 years. I think it was almost 200 years. So there was huge implications that, literally centuries of research were going to be destroyed. So they did this really, really great thing where...
Don't tell them what it is.
Okay.
So they got to the point where activists were going to burn the field.
Yep, they were going to burn the field, and they
It
were
was
like...
planned.
Yep. they
And
were-
these scientists were distraught.
Yep,
And this backroom crew, about to play the video,
yes.
is what they did. Have a
Yes.
look.
We have heard that protesters are planning to attack our GMV trial site on the 27th of May. We ask them to please consider our message in the spirit of openness and dialogue. We know we cannot stop you taking the action you're planning to take, but please reconsider before it's too late and before several years' worth of work to which we have been devoting our lives will be destroyed forever.
We appeal to you as environmentalists. We agree that agriculture should work with nature rather than against it. And in fact, that is what we are trying to do with our plants. We have developed this new variety of wheat which doesn't require treatment with an insecticide, and it uses a natural aphid repellent which already widely occurs in nature and is produced by more than 400 different plant species. We have engineered this into the wheat genome so that the wheat can do the same thing to defend itself. Are you really against this because it could have a lot of environmental benefit? Or is it simply because you distrust it because it's a GMO? The suggestion that our wheat is part cow is simply not true.
This is where we're going to phase
The
it
gene that
out.
we have added
If you
was
want to look
synthetically
at
made in the
this,
lab.
look
And
at
even with regular
Rofstede
plant breeding-
GM appeal. It lasts for about 3 minutes. It's a beautiful video. All you're seeing is people defending and talking about their work. I filled up when I watched that.
Yeah. I mean, it's
Why
very-
is that effective communication? Because the protests didn't happen.
The protests
the
didn't
fields
happen.
didn't get burnt
Yep.
down.
Yep. So they did the appeal. They put out a petition. Loads of public support happened because of the appeal, and I think it was because they were just very honest. They were very human. They said, "Look, these are the implications. If you do this, we're actually doing things not because, like they said, they're not doing things because they're trying to." They're trying to.
They just took them inside their work and said, this is our work,
Yes,
don't burn it.
exactly. Yeah.
That makes sense. Your reaction to that?
Actually, the main research we did was on a really similar case,
Okay.
on the destruction on a GM potato field in Flanders. So it's really similar, but they did destroy it,
Okay.
whilst yours didn't. And actually, it really shows that in this kind of debates, almost immediately people are forced in a position of, are you pro or against? Is it because you are against GM? That's what he's suggesting. Although I like the way that they are talking, but he's already pointing at them. Is it because you are against GM? Are you that kind of guy? So immediately, people are forced to choose yes or no. Now, I think in reality, it's extremely complex. Even if you look at Facebook and you have to indicate your status, you can indicate it's complicated. While in a GM debate, you can't. You're pro or contra. The main challenge, I think, about communication is to allow a debate to be complex and not to have simplistic messages. And it's a message for all kinds, all parties involved in a particular debate. Because we all simplify. And the scientists simplify because they are talking about risk and food safety. And risk and food safety, is it safe? Of course it's safe.
Why not? Yeah.
And they think, because we know that, that's clear. Other issues, we are not involved because we are scientists. The public actually is not much involved, apart from specific groups of people. And they come with the equally simple message. It's not safe, it's GM, and therefore it's not safe. Why do they come with such a simple message? Because they talk in a public space. If you talk to the same people in a bar afterwards, they will say, but it's very complex, it's complicated. And very typical as well, is that in this kind of debates, what you bring in public is a simple question about safety and risk, while your real objective is completely different.
I'll tell you what.
Let me add one sentence. And mainly, I think, very often, what is the real objective is related to what kind of, in this case, what kind of farming system do you want? That's what it is about. And what is the role of companies, of the public, of science, and so on? But all that is very complex and very complicated. So we don't debate that.
I guess I interpreted the video totally differently. And this is where I think we all have a lot to learn. I listened to what he said, but what appealed to me as a human was they were human.
Yeah.
And so, here's what's sticking in my head. The woman who said, "This was my work, please don't destroy my trials." And I hadn't seen this video before. And the gentleman said, we can agree, we all care about the environment. And so, I don't know that for me, because I tried to receive it as I tried to just be me and not think about the science for a minute. And to me, the humanness of that appealed to me. I didn't really actually, the facts and the comments didn't actually matter. It was, I actually liked these people, and now I may not want to, maybe that would change me because I liked the people that I just saw, and that's all.
But what this guy said, and what you mentioned as well, that's crucial. He said, actually, we are all caring about the environment. And that's, I think, what we have to look for is, what do we have in common? What do we have in common? We want to be a bit on the soft side. We want to have a better world.
Yeah.
We want to feed the world. We want to have a sustainable farming system. That we all have in common, on whatever side of the spectrum you are. And you have to take that as a starting point, even before you do the research. And that's the challenge, I think, to formulate research questions, as we are with a bunch of scientists here, you have to formulate research questions together.
Yeah,
Allowing funding to be spent on multiple kind of answers.
Together with whom?
The formulation of the question, you mean? Together with the funding bodies, with the funding agencies. Because, well, but this might be some bit of a controversy, but I have to say it. Of course, science is political. Obviously, scientists are very objective. They do in as objective way as possible, they do their research. But science is based on funding. So those people who are formulating the Horizon 2020 programs, those people who are formulating that kind of funding, they decide what kind of question that you ask. Now, let me, as we are talking about our kids, a number of years ago, my youngest daughter, who was still small, I was in the bathroom and she was preparing her lunchbox. And she shouts upstairs, "Daddy, the apple is too big." So I showed, look for a smaller apple. Imagine that she said, "Daddy, the box is too small." Then I would say, look for a bigger box. So the way you phrase the question leads to a particular answer. And both answers are right, valuable, proven, and so on. But it's a different answer. It's a different solution for an underlying problem, which is actually the same. It's a common problem, it's a shared problem, but you can ask different questions. And if that lady, again, says we don't agree among scientists, first of all, we don't have to agree, I think. Secondly, we are asking different questions.
Let me just go, because you said this twice now and you're not hearing her message. Don't agree on the key message.
Yeah.
That's a little bit different.
clear. Yeah.
They might still disagree behind the
that's
scenes,
right.
but if they're going to do a press conference, it would be good if the people behind the press conference would say, no, that's not right. And so if you are going to the public, wouldn't it be a good idea if you actually had a message that was united from, say, the University of Ghent, have an announcement about a new report, and you've all decided what's in the report and you agree on it, for example?
Yes, if you allow different voices within the report. If you allow different positions within the report, then it's possible. Or
Now
if you
let's take-
allow
let's
to
take the case of
elaborate the question.
glyphosate.
Sorry, I didn't.
Let's take the case of glyphosate, for example. And
Probably
would
it's not
What-
coincidence
what's
that you did.
glyphosate?
Yeah, but let's take that. And
That was a joke.
and
That's a
we-
scientist joke, by the way.
Yeah,
that is a
exactly.
joke.
That's what
And we-
scientists think's
and we
funny.
would- it's a hot topic. No matter what hot topic, neonics could be the same case. And we would agree on the same message. Would that do? I'd say no. And probably, I'm fascinated with this movement, Extinction Rebellion. You see it in France, we saw it in London. What is it? What does it mean? And I think it's a kind of rejection of this world. And it's not general, but it's there. And the press is sympathetic to it. It changes our attitudes. And what I would say, as I was trained as a political philosopher and a philosopher of science, there's a very simple question. What is the problem? What do we want to know and why? I think it's very necessary. That is why I asked you, you need to talk with whom. I think we need a public discussion. What do we want? What kind of a society do we want? Most of the discussions, today's discussions, are about what is the kind of society we want. The yellow vests in France show us that they want this society because we don't want to give up too much, which is something very important.
I want to, I'm going straight back to you,
Yep.
but what I want to do in the second half of this conversation is to push you to give us tools. You're kind of alluding to them, but you're not then saying, you're saying you should go talk to a 10-year-old. Go talk to a school. We have programs where we go to a school. So I want to extrapolate from you distinct things that our delegates here can then do to not be an arrogant scientist, to be a better communicator. There is an issue right now, not just with science, but with the public about not believing facts. Science is facts. What do you do about that, Dick?
You cannot talk about that. I think you need, so I fully agree with Joost, you need to get back to the simple question. What is the problem and how would you solve that problem? There are various solutions. So show them various solutions. Giving up glyphosate, well, will make food a bit more expensive. Is that what we want? Is glyphosate okay for the environment? Well, in the environment, my worries are in the environment, not in my body. So what is the problem? So let's just talk about the problem. What would I do indeed? We didn't talk about that beforehand backstage, but what would I do being there right now? Perhaps I'd open up and say, well, yes, this is what we did. You hate us for us, but let's talk about the consequences of getting rid of it. What would happen? Tell us. Tell us what would happen. Tell us what the alternatives are, and let's engage in a conversation about what we want and facts.
Yeah.
Indeed, science is political, but science is not political in its facts, but about in the way we apply it.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of discussion we need.
Of course it is.
I would agree with you wholeheartedly. And I would agree, I would purport, and obviously that wouldn't be true, that we've tried to talk about what the world would be like without glyphosate. However, I apologize, my opinion is a little US-centric because that's the space I live in. I don't think people care. I think we have first world problems, and in the United States, many of the people who are building the conversation online, in social media, don't care. Now, what that means for many people, so for instance, in the United States, there's been a recent study, and this isn't glyphosate specific, but people in lower economic classes are now not buying fruits and vegetables because they can't afford organic. So they will choose, because of their fear, to not buy things that are important for their nourishment. That is horrible, and it's a travesty, but it's the first world environment that we have built that is tough to overcome, and I welcome ideas for how to overcome
And that
it.
is a discussion as well. That is a discussion
Yep.
as well.
And we've had a lot of conversations with nutritionists, dietitians about how to have that conversation, and we can't do it well enough.
I also want to say, Dick, when you were saying what are Bayer doing, I was in the ladies' bathroom yesterday, and somebody from Bayer started talking to me, and she started to talk to me for about 10 minutes. So I missed my taxi for lunch. But she was telling me how they've all been told as members of staff that they are now ambassadors for their company, and she has to talk to people wherever they are in her life, and just personally talk about what the company is doing and how. And that was extraordinary because you can train staff to do that. She didn't have to do that in the bathroom.
She didn't have to. And
But she did.
The trouble.
I mean, she took that training literally,
Yes.
and I was like, this is great. I mean, I am so late for lunch right now, but this is
Were
working.
you convinced?
I just thought, what a great technique where you are asking your staff to talk about the company. Now, I'm going to go off and do my own research because I'm a journalist, but if I was a normal member of the public, I think I may well have thought, that was a nice lady. She spent 10 minutes chatting to me, and she was lovely, and she was doing exactly what you've told your staff to do, and nobody was looking.
And here's the reality, though.
Yeah.
So we have trained our employees to do that.
Yeah.
I will bet practically 5% of our employees actually do it.
Oh, so you paid
So
good money
we-
for the one you brought
but-
here to
but
get
again, I mean, that's where, I implore everyone in the room to think about, we have those opportunities every day with our friends and family, with the people around us to make us human and make us real, and we don't take them.
Yep.
But
Let's take the
just-
question. Let's take the question. Yes, Helen.
Thank you. Carmen Tiu from Corteva. I've been doing science for more than 3 decades. So I think the kind of tips that I'm looking forward to is how do we communicate these days scientific messages to eventually a global audience because of the digital media, eventually anything that we will put, regardless if it's going into a scientific journal or a presentation like this event or anything like that, it will eventually be cut and be propagated through other digital media in general. So how can we customize and craft our messages such that it will eventually go to anyone, regardless if they will be kids' schools, housewives or anyone, agencies, anyone. So how can we communicate that it will be covering most needs? Thank you.
I think a mistake that we make is we consider the public as this one homogenous mass, and it's not, right? It's not. There's so many different audiences and different audience groups. And I think, a lot of us, it comes back to the whole scientist being arrogant thing. We expect people to, if we have a talk, people are going to come. But then what ends up happening is only the science interested, and it's not the people that we really want to get to. So I think it's really important to target your audience. Think about how they consume media. Think about where they hang out. Think about where, for example, if we're trying to reach farmers, are they specific farmer magazines? I'm sorry, that's really general, but as there specific radio shows that they would listen to, you need to reach them where they are, not expect them to just come to us. But I think the one thing all audiences have in common is that you talk to them like you're talking to people. Be human. If you want to talk about uncertainty, talk about uncertainty. It's okay to talk about uncertainty. It's a scale. Uncertainty exists in science. We can't ignore that uncertainty exists in science.
We heard that protesters are planning to attack our GMV trial site on the 27th of May. We ask them to please consider our message in the spirit of openness and dialogue.
Oh, right.
Oh,
okay,
the video's
so
playing.
it's those scientists who are still doing their appeal. Hi, backstage. Thank you so much. It makes it so
really
much
want
more.
us not to burn the
makes it
house
so
down.
much more exciting.
Okay.
If you weren't convinced the first time, you may be convinced the second time. Alina, please continue.
Just be human.
How can you describe being human? Because obviously, scientists don't necessarily have that skill. They've got data. Should I leave now?
No, literally, how would you explain something to your grandma or to your kids?
Are you talking down?
No, I'm not talking down. I'm talking to
It's
them.
more than that. You're right. You have to target the audience, but it's not only about informing a number of audiences. You have to listen to your audience.
No,
You have
definitely.
to have a dialogue. It's not about information. It's not about teaching. It's not about informing. It's about talking to each other. And you have to set up, and that's what Dick is saying, to formulate that question that we all share. You have to have a dialogue and not informing people.
No, yeah, definitely. I mean, our whole thing is
But
about
that's
looking
difficult.
at questions that people ask.
Yeah, but it's extremely difficult because I think it was you who talked about teaching and the schools. I did 2 exercises. I asked it's not scientific sample, but I asked my 2 daughters, 15 and 18, so the third and the sixth year grade of secondary school, what have you learned? Show me your textbooks. What have you learned? I asked it yesterday about GM and about farming in general. Nothing. Zero. Here, alter. So nothing. They didn't learn anything. Second thing I want, so that's a problem.
Yes. Yes.
But then what are you going to teach them in case you do? I have been teaching, I think it was last year, in this university, I was giving a class on biotech students, experts, really specialists in biotechnology. They didn't, most of them don't know anything about societal debate on GM. They do not know what is going on outside their lab. And I was explaining to them that the specific issues on GM potatoes in Flanders and the GM debate in Europe, all these different positions, what kind of questions, what kind of positions do we have, what are the discourses that are there? And most of them were looking at me like, what is this guy talking about? We know what GM is. I mean, we don't need that discussion. I mean, we are the experts.
Dick, go ahead.
A very simple answer to your question. Read Lewis Carroll. When Alice asked the Cheshire Cat, where do I go? The cat asked, where do you want to go? And Alice said, well, I don't know. And the cat said, well, then it doesn't matter. It's about a means to an end. And it starts with the end. What is the kind of what is the problem? What is the kind of solution we want? As your guys from Rothamsted said, we all want this green world, this better world. Now, my research contributes what to this end? It's always very important to communicate from this end that is political. So in fact, it's a political discussion. What I say to people in the Netherlands is I would even advise it to try to communicate on this level of what are our ends. We want you to join us in reformulating our ends. So basically that is your job as well. And we're talking here about science. I'm going to say something about science. Is this science?
Yeah.
Or is it just applied science? We're talking about applied science here, not about fundamental discoveries. So basically, it's just engineering trying indeed to find a means to an end. So, well, I've been bullying you now. Now the good news. You have a great opportunity to talk about ends because you're basically trying to create solutions to this end. So please communicate from the goals you want to achieve.
I would totally agree with that, and I think the reality is that's hard to do because that's not how traditional PR works in most firms. And so we are really trying to turn the Titanic in this space, and I wish I could snap my fingers and say, let's totally change how we do our corporate communication.
Let's give everybody an example, because rather than you just saying, we're trying to turn, I mean, your PR company must
get paid a lot.
Yeah. But there's a series that you've done called Give It a Minute. Do not play it yet backstage. Hold. You are going to tell us the story of Give It a Minute, and then we'll play a little example of it. But first, the story.
Yeah, so this is just one small example of a way that we've tried to talk about science a little bit differently in a short, how do you explain a GMO or a pesticide in 60 seconds or less? And I will tell you, in my professional career, this is probably the hardest thing I've ever done. Because like the young lady said over there, trying to get scientists to agree on a message with a PR firm is very difficult. Because we, as scientists, want to stay true to the science.
Amy, get to the meat.
A PR firm wants to make a point, and we can't agree.
Right, so get to what? Because I'm going to...
And so 60 seconds of consensus on how to explain something complex.
I tell you what I want you to tell them, which is... Because we only have so much time. you sat down and you tried to explain, let's say glyphosate, and tell us the process, but tell us the short version of the
Yeah,
process.
so we sat down with the PR firm, 30-minute interview. What is glyphosate? So they come back with a script. We wrote, what is glyphosate? And I say, no, you're totally wrong on what is glyphosate. The science is wrong. You tried to PR it up too much. That's not right. It doesn't work. We went back and forth 20 times on every video to get it right.
And the reason why I wanted Amy to tell that story was, how long does it take for the public to understand a concept that is very easy for many of us? So 20 versions, and then backstage, give it a minute, glyphosate, that's going to appear on the screen right now. Have a look.
Whether you battle weeds at your home or in your fields, Roundup branded herbicides are some of the most effective methods for controlling them. But what about their main active ingredient, glyphosate? Is it harmful? How does it work? Give it a minute. Glyphosate-based products were introduced in the 70s and became popular with farmers for the wide variety of weeds they help control and their history of safe use. In fact, in addition to the US EPA, regulatory agencies in more than 160 countries have approved glyphosate-based products. Here's how it works. Glyphosate is applied to weeds. Once absorbed, it travels to the roots, where it blocks a specific enzyme found in plants, not animals or humans. Without that enzyme, the weed can't make the building blocks it needs to grow. The entire weed withers to the ground, where any remaining glyphosate is broken down in the soil into naturally occurring substances like carbon dioxide and phosphate. To further target only weeds, certain crops have been specifically modified so that glyphosate doesn't affect them. This means farmers don't have to turn over their soil as much to control weeds, which reduces emissions. It also reduces soil erosion, in some cases by as much as 90%. Precise, effective, and proven. All reasons glyphosate is the most widely used weed control product in the world today. That's a lot to cover in a minute. So if you still have questions, check out Monsanto.com.
And I would even be critical, so this is about 5 years old. This was really progressive 5 years ago. I would be critical with us now, and I would say we could be even more benefits driven than what we do. I would absolutely agree, which is why, unfortunately, it's an evolution, right? We're learning what works. Sometimes we're bad at what works, but at least we're trying. I mean,
Amy, let
let
them review that idea, because I think it'd be nice, because a lot of the videos, none of them have seen them. None of you have seen them. I just spoke to you individually and said, let's do some examples, so you're all seeing them at the same time. And also, this is a space where you don't feel like you should have to defend every single thing. We're just talking and trying to get to solutions. Reaction, Dick.
It won't work. This video won't work because it won't convince those people who are already convinced of something else.
Oh, I totally agree. And that's not my audience.
This goes to this question from Nathan. Should scientists talk to everyone, or are some people just not worth talking to?
Some people are just not worth talking to.
That's a good takeaway, right? It's a good takeaway. You have to be able to perceive which ones are not worth
Why
talking
do you say
to.
that? Isn't that a bit arrogant?
Of course.
Yes, it is. But so here's my analogy that I'll use. I don't love walking into the wall 5 times a day.
Yeah.
And so I can make a choice. I can decide to walk into the wall 5 times a day, or I can decide to do something productive with my time. I choose to do something productive with my time. And we don't believe it because we only hear the negative most of the time, but most of the population actually doesn't understand pesticides or GMOs and doesn't have an opinion, and we think everybody does because I only see the negative on social media. Our opportunity is with the people that are in the middle. 80% of our population is actually willing to listen. That's where I should be spending my time, not driving myself crazy.
It's about targeting, yeah.
And also, I think, there's come up a few times now that, we think people don't care. There's the science interested and that's it. But it's not true. I think everyone has these pivotal moments in their life, flashpoints, when evidence and science start to matter. For example, like I might not have cared about, is organic really better for you until everyone was like, okay, yeah, you should only feed organic to your kids or else they're gonna get cancer. And that's when I would start, wondering, okay, what's the evidence behind this? What's the science behind this? Everybody has those pivotal moments when evidence and science starts to matter. And I think it's really about scoping what people are talking about and really understanding the public discussion. And you won't answer questions until you know the questions that's being asked.
You'll do your rebuttal very quickly because I want to get
Very
to the
quickly,
questions.
just to add to what you were saying, again, it depends on the question that you are asking. Is the question, is organic more healthy than conventional? Yes or no? But that's a different question from, is it better for the environment or not? It's a different question from, does it allow more family farming than conventional farming? And do we want more family farming or not? So it depends on the kind of question that you are asking and who is choosing the question that you want to answer. That's critical.
Well,
Who is choosing the question that you want to put on the plate?
And
I
who
think
is
you made a
choosing the
great point
audience
over. You gotta ask
question?
the
It is
question.
me.
There's the audience
Hello,
question. You
sir.
have to be quiet.
Thanks for your patience. Go ahead.
Yeah, hello, thank you. I really wonder if it's fair to try to convince someone with a 1-minute video about something where 10,000 of scientists are working on, yeah? So if we want to explain agriculture, if we want to explain plant protection with a 60-second video, that cannot be fully convincing. And I think we must also be, let's say, prepared to go the long way to explain something which is complicated and where let's say, many scientific questions answered, let's say, in the registration process, to explain this to someone who is willing to listen to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, it is hard because it's complicated and it takes a long time. But there are good arguments to explain everything that is going on. The big problem is that many people are not, let's say, willing to listen to science or have the patience to go through it. And this starts in kindergarten. This starts in school, as you said, that more people should be, let's say, literate to really discuss on a like, factual basis. Yeah, and that's not only true for agro. It's also true for technology. Who knows how Google works? And it influences us, and we must have a discussion that is based on more the background, not only the superficial things.
But do you want everyone to have the same kind of information? Because the questions are different. As Aimee said, Greenpeace and Greenpeace members are not my targeted audience with this video. It's the general public that they know glyphosate is bad. That's all they know. Mm-hmm. Well, let's inform them. And this is what they see. Someone who has doubts, has a different question, has doubts. So you need to address these doubts. And it's really about targeting and defining the problem someone has. What is the question someone has? And you need to target, I think.
And I think it's not so much about giving people the answers, but rather equipping them with the right questions to ask. For example, we have this campaign called Ask for Evidence, which is it's a public campaign where we literally tell people, you know what, you should be able to ask for the evidence behind scientifically sounding claims. We have Evidence Hunter activity pack that's for school children, where they can do after school, which is to allow them to critically assess social media posts, for example. So it's really equipping them with the skills to be able to critically assess things, not just giving them the answers, because everyone's going to have different questions. You're not going to have answers for all of them.
Okay, I hear that. Let me just move on because we have people want to talk to you, so make your responses very quick. All right, hello, sir.
I don't want to delay us for dinner, so I want to go quickly 3 points. The first is...
3 points? Make the one that's most important.
I think the information that is given to people who are making these decisions, it's not just technical, because in the United States we have many lawyers, and lawyers are different than scientists. And I read the paper yesterday, and Monsanto had lists. And so, Monsanto had lists in 7 countries. So they watched the video, no. And so there is this distrust of some companies. And how to overcome that is a completely different issue.
Absolutely. And we need to talk more.
Yeah.
So
and
I'll bet all
only
of
goes
you
so
have
far.
a list too, right?
But
so we need to talk.
I also think if you talk about communication, about science, that, forgive me, but that the position of corporates
Yeah.
and the position of public bodies is different,
No,
whether
you're
you
right.
like it or not. You have other interests than the general well-being of society.
Yeah,
Your
I'm
interest
trying
is
to
that
make money.
your company will still be there next generation, so that your kids can go there as you did. That's the interest, and therefore you need the support of the public,
Yep.
which is completely different from the position of the policymakers or whatever, where their objective is to support, to increase the general well-being of society. That's a different position.
Yep.
And I was going to add something, but I forgot.
That's fine, because we have another question, and it may well come back to you. Inspired by the question.
Yes,
Hello.
coming back to the ambassador idea, which is a great idea, I would like to share something. You can have a script, but you mentioned 20 times you have to go and mention this. It's by going to different places. I was invited once to the Lions Club dinner, you know, and then people asked me to speak about agriculture. And I have many questions. I don't want to spend too much time here, but it's by getting this exercise all the time that you get better and better. And then you do mistakes when you answer questions, of course, but next time you do better. And if everybody in this room would do that once a week, for example, then you get better as communicate your passion, because scientists are passionate people about what they do. And then the training is how can I just in real life communicate to people who have no idea about science. And this is Lions Club. You get medical doctors, you get entrepreneurs, you get workers, you get the population. Of course, that this is in the Lions Club, but there's questions that tomato have no taste. And then you have to invent the answer to that. So ambassador passion for me is also part of the emotion.
I want to, before we wrap up, because I want you to think of something that people can go away with, our delegates can go away with, that they can actually use practically to be better science communicators in agri-science, in science, actually in life. But I'm going to show you a trailer, and then Joost will tell you why he picked it. It's the Food Evolution official theatrical trailer. Run that tape.
The survival of our species has always depended on advances in agriculture.
Climate change is going to scramble this how are we going to feed the world debate.
This is all about companies.
This is about money. This is about power.
It's much easier to sow fear than it is science.
If you don't have food, then you're going to steal, you're going to kill someone.
So, how do we make the most informed decisions about how we feed ourselves?
The three most terrifying letters in the English language are GMO.
I wondered how many people really know what they are.
I don't know.
I know it's bad.
Okay, this is too scary to watch.
Genetic
Let's just
engineering
fade
is a
this
modern
out.
form of
It's the
breeding.
music that's freaking me out and the hard cuts. I think we can see a tomato and then a chop and it go boom and it, ah! All right, thanks for scaring us. Why did you pick that?
I took this trailer because actually I think it's a wonderful movie. It's so well made, but it's terrible. I really didn't like it at all. I saw it for the first time in a debate at the Free University of Brussels. There were 200 people, 89% of them were biotech-related people, and then some activists against. And I thought that the way that, of course, this was very short, but the message is generally that those people who do not accept GM or stupid and very stupid. That's basically the message. And they are stupid because lack of education, because of religion, because of this or that or that. And there is not any moment in the movie where actually you see an attitude from the people who made the movie or the sponsors of the people who made the movie.
Which wasn't industry funded, by the way.
Yeah, but to listen to them, really to listen to them, not just because it's polite to listen, but to listen from an attitude that I'm willing to learn from you as well. That's not there. And the whole atmosphere in that aula with these 200 people was hostile against those activists. I mean, you could feel the tension in the room. And it's strange. And then it illustrated another point. Then we had a debate with the audience, and within 5 minutes, the debate was about capitalism, was about colonialism, was about so many funny things, starting from GM. And it illustrates that GM and the whole GM debate is a symbol for other debates, and it's your debate. What future of society do we want? That's what it is about.
Fully agree.
And GM is just a very, easy is not the word, but
scapegoat.
A scapegoat, maybe.
Right.
A scapegoat.
Yeah.
That has been used now for a couple of decades, and it's...
Do you know, Plenary, what would be beautiful is if we could clone you and just take one of you home with us. We could just put you in our kitchen and consult with you whenever we have an ethical issue, whenever we have to talk to the public. That would be nice, but we can't do that. But what we can do is get you to give us something solid that we can take away and do as scientists to better communicate with the public. It might be a way of thinking. It might be something practical that they can go and look at. Amy.
I would ask the audience, when was the last time you respectfully advocated for your science? And you should do it 10 times more often. We can't do it enough to advocate as a human about what we do.
Dick.
Always communicate means to an end. Simple enough?
Maybe we should be more nuanced.
No.
There are layers.
I want to be blunt. Always communicate means to an end. And please, indeed, that is very interesting what Jo said. It's about consumerism. And in France, what we saw with the yellow vests, that is very interesting. Monsieur Hulot, so the ex-environment minister, teamed up with the union in order to create a vision of society which was human beings first, not capitalism and so on and so forth, and populism, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Very interesting how they communicate means to an end, because they sense there is something going on in society and it's not about GM, probably. I fully agree.
Alina.
I'm going to give some very practical things that you can do. We actually have a public engagement guide for researchers that you can check out on senseaboutscience.org. It talks through 5 simple steps that you can apply to your research. And there's also things like pick up the phone and talk to a journalist. They're not scary. They are always looking for experts. Literally, pick up the phone. They will talk to you. Say, I want to be an expert on your list, and they'll put you on the list. And also, talk to policymakers. Find out what's on their agenda. Super easy. The European Parliament has a website with a list of public consultations that's going on, a list of things that policymakers are looking at. Try to get involved in these little things where, you know, it doesn't have to be a scary talk in front of a pub or in a festival. You could do things like give evidence to a policymaker. You could do things like tell a journalist that their headline is misleading. You could do things like plan effective.
How's that worked out for you?
For me?
Yes.
I have not done it myself.
Okay,
but
do it.
A lot of the researchers that I train have done it.
Yeah, okay, and it works?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, good. Jos, thank you for the practical suggestions.
Maybe to address the issue of literacy that was being mentioned by a gentleman over there, I think we need indeed more literacy, but also scientists need more literacy. And they do not only need literacy about technical issues, but they need literacy about other disciplines. And they need this literacy about social sciences as well. Yep. I think scientists need to understand mechanisms about how society works. And how does it start? It starts by tearing down walls within research institutes. And actually, we are, since I think 2 years at ILVO, we are doing that. Between the different departments, social sciences, plant science, and so on, we do now have system exercises. We try to look at the problem from a systemic perspective. It means that you look at it with the social scientists, with the plant scientists, with the whatever kind of scientists that are all there, and try to understand how different people approach it. And it makes you a richer scientist. And you still remain the expert in your discipline, but it allows you to talk and to understand other perspectives.
Joost, Amy, Alina, Dick, thank you so much. Delegates, your panel. Okay. You are being presented with chocolates made by the Biosciences Engineering faculty.
Wow.
They are safe to eat, I am told.
They are safe.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen,
Organic.
enjoy your evening. Thank you very much
Thank you
for
very
being
much.
here.